Welcome, welcome. Let me know when you can hear me and I'll get rolling. It's good to be back. Welcome Carl, welcome Piraten Pete, welcome Mark Kuttner. Just guessing at the pronunciation there, but hope we're coming through loud and clear. Hey Stina. We have confirmed audio. Whether it's good audio remains to be told. But let's get going. We will try having music today, and you can all complain if it's distracting. This music comes from Offerlund. The people of Swedish Kodsnack know who he is, Krig. All right. Oh, that way. Hi. Let's see if we can't get this show on the road. You probably want to see my screen instead of just my face. As I said, it's good to be back. And this time we are brought to you by the good people at Tigris Data. I'm not gonna be spending a ton of time on a spiel about what they do. They're on the screen, you can see. It's a globally distributed S3 compatible object storage service that provides low latency anywhere. They baked object storage and CDN together, which I think is a very promising thing. They are also the object storage provider that ships with Fly.io. So Fly finally has a managed object storage and a managed database. It's Tigris and it's Supabase. So now we have everything we need if we don't want to spend a ton of time on ops. Thanks, Carl. I did fret the lighting a little bit. All right. So what I wanted to kind of get into today is object storage, because I'm going to be working with Tigris and they do object storage. I am going to be doing some projects and streaming around object storage specifically. So explaining things about object storage and why it's so popular and why people use it. And what used to be the case before that. That seems like a good idea, a good starting point for what I hope will be a whole series of streams. So we'll start by just putting together a new mix project. So we can do just object stream. It's just something so we get a project file, really. And we're going to want to pull a few dependencies, and we're gonna do this to give us a bit more of a backdrop to talk about S3 on. So if you're joining from another ecosystem, welcome. We do Elixir over here, mostly, but everyone's welcome. Oh, right, with EXAWS S3 stuff, you usually want to pull a few additional dependencies, right? Poison, Hackney, Sweet XML. There's nothing sweet about XML. Sound off in the chat if you haven't used an S3 compatible object storage, because I think the norm is pretty strong towards them. I think that's the negation is probably better. I have two terminals. Oh, did I do something a little bit aggressive? I don't care which version of Sweet XML we're using. Literally any. But And along the way, feel free to ask questions. It's actually helpful. So as we go, ask away. Okay, so we have a little bit of an Elixir project here, and I'm just going to make a Tigris module because we're going to be using Tigris. But yeah, if you've ever dealt with files in a web system, or if you were there in the bad old days, you might have actually used something like NFS, the network file storage system, file server, network file services. I don't remember what the S is for, but what that does is it pretends to be your regular local file system, but it actually goes over the network. And it allows you to do some things kind of transparently. You can pretend that the files are local and they will just be a little bit slower than if they were on disk. And if you worked with NFS, you've probably had a ton of problems related to the fact that the files are not actually there on disk, and brutal I/O problems when trying to scale it or when using it aggressively. I know I had kernel crashes from attempting to use an NFS caching mechanism, the file system cache mechanism combined with NFS, which just hard crashed the Linux kernel in certain circumstances. Hey McPool, welcome to the stream. And yeah, other options like Samba, also not ideal for kind of serving files to your end users. FTP was never really meant for this. And what Amazon did with S3 is they essentially defined a very simplistic service for storing files. Files in scare quotes, because they are not files, they are objects, which is also kind of vague. But fundamentally, it's a key value store where the values are fine. It's fine for the values to be large. It's a fairly simple object store. The whole point is that by keeping the feature set quite low, it's like, yeah, you don't have a ton of fancy querying functionality. Well, you do now, you didn't initially. It allows you to constrain the problem space and make something that's very reliable and very performant and very easy to scale. Primarily easy to scale. So fundamentally, well, we can look at AWS because it has modules for this stuff. So actually, we can just use the Tigris docs there. They look really nice, if I recall. So we can look at the S3 compatible API part. So here are things that S3 supports. We can look at the object level stuff. An S3 server is generally called a bucket, and it's not quite a server. You can list the objects in a bucket. You can get an object from a bucket. You can put an object into a bucket, and then you can also delete an object. Those are essentially the fundamentals. Anything else is bonus and niceties. So with those, Amazon shipped S3, and it essentially gave you an infinite hard drive for all the files that you needed to store for your customers and your users, which is very nice, and it was very annoying to do large scale file wrangling before then. It's worth noting that this is not a file system. It doesn't do what a file system does, really. It is fairly different. The Keys are often used as if they were file paths, but they aren't. They are just strings. So when, for example, let's say list objects. So this will take us to the Amazon documentation. I know there's a prefix thing. Yeah, limits the response to keys that begin with the specified prefix. This is how you select directories. The slashes don't mean anything. So it makes it really easy to deal with files in a very scalable way, which was more difficult previously in the past. And I think we can show a little bit of what it is you can do and how you can do it here. I might as well show. So if you type fly Tigris or fly storage, those are aliased, you can do fly storage create, and this is just how you create a bucket. Let's see. Hold on. I don't want to list all my orgs because I have clients there. Yeah, right. Didn't remember the name of the org I have. Tigris Data Community. So let me do stream test 1. Now it's gonna show some credentials, but we're not using this one, so that's fine. If you're really fast now, you can upload a file, but I'm gonna remove it. Yeah. Love destroying things irreversibly. But that's how you generate your access information. So instead, you see these all are prefixed with AWS, and that's because all the libraries have this as a convention due to Amazon establishing S3 as a protocol or an API, and then everyone else implementing it as well. And that's why Tigris has gone with an S3 compatible thing, because it will play nice with all the tooling. And there is so much tooling built based on S3. Because S3 is like super scalable and super reliable, a lot of people have done a lot of interesting experiments with what you can use it for. It's a kind of dumb but very reliable storage layer, and people like those because you can build complex things that work on top of them. All right, so I believe I have oh, right. That's not how you do that. One moment. I'm glad it didn't show them all. I just need to get my environment variables where I want them. I wonder if there's any Tigris people in the chat right now watching in fear as things are getting used live. They do have customers and stuff. It's not that new. I think they've been stealthy before now and like preview on fly and stuff. But it can be a little bit nerve-wracking when someone's going to show your stuff. Okay, so now I have the environment variables there. I should be able to connect with EX AWS without much issue. I don't think there's anything I need to set up with the base package, right? Nah, probably not. We'll find out. I don't remember. Let me know if you have any questions along the way, as per usual. And sound off in the chat if you join. Love knowing that there's people there. So let's see, there's not really a ton of setup. So we should be able to do this. So I have a bucket called underjord streaming already set up. I don't love the API for AWS with the request calls and everything, but it makes sense. Module JSON is not available. Come on, don't print all my stuff. Okay, it's just the access key, I think. Oh well. Tell me if I dox my key, I will have to rotate it. It's gonna be very harsh. I think I pulled poison in because it told me to do poison, and now it's asking for another JSON parser. That's evil. Oh. I don't want to be in lib. I want to be here. Okay. So let's see, what's a recent version of JSON? So JSON is a JSON library for Elixir. They are working on one for the Erlang standard library. I hope that gets merged eventually, because it would be nice to not have to add JSON to everything. No. Let's see if that does it. Error, access key you provided does not exist in our records. Surprising. Let's check. I'm checking something off screen. Apologies. Hold on. I hope I didn't remove that bucket. No, it exists. Let's see. Maybe I need to force the endpoint URL? Hold on. Do I just need to add something to the config to get this stuff? Yeah, so alternate endpoints might not be picked up automatically. I don't recall. I don't have a config. That's annoying. Ugh. All right. So the host would be fly.storage.tigris.dev. It would be HTTPS preferably, and the port is 443, which should be the default. I think the config will be loaded by default. I don't actually recall. I haven't done that in ages. Very quiet in the chat. People alive? Woo! Suddenly we got a response, a successful response, and the contents is an empty list. Good. I was a little bit sweating there, just in case I completely screwed something up or like. But that's the fun of streaming. Yes, good. You're still there. Thank you. That's reassuring. All right. We've confirmed that we have working credentials. We can use those. And so what we just did was a list call. And let's do, so the convention in Elixir is an exclamation points means you're using functions that will throw an error if they fail. I'm glad, Adarsh. I'm glad it's helpful to see things from scratch. So we can alias CWS, that S3, and then we do S3 list objects. So I think we have, let's see, system get end bucket name, I believe is set. Yes, so we can use that. P bucket. I'm gonna do fetch and new them. Is it a system fetch n, right? Yes. So that will blow up if it doesn't exist. So that's there. So we're doing list objects, and then we can do ex AWS request. Good question, Carl. Whether it's cheap to list objects in a bucket even when there's lots of objects. So the API tends to have a max items of 1000, and then you can get like continuation tokens to do multiple calls. So really you're making multiple calls, and if your provider charges per request, whether it's expensive or not depends on your tolerance and the value of those calls, of course. The Tigris pricing is a little bit unusual in that, so there's a free allowance, 5 gigs of storage, month to month, 10,000 put, copy, post, list request per month, so you can really kick the tires, and that's like 100,000 get and select and all other requests per month. So you can, if you use it as a public bucket to share something to others, you can get about 100,000 shares done. And this is interesting, data transfer to machines in the same region, data transfer to internet, nothing. I hope they can stick to that, because that's a very good deal. You will not get super surprising egress fees or transfer fees. That's the pricing there. I haven't looked at like S3 list object pricing, but maybe one of you can dig it up and share in the chat, because cheap in terms of time, it should be pretty fast. So when you're listing with a prefix, that's something we should do here. Just include the prefix option, and see, how do they want that? I poked around with some of this recently. Yeah, it's a keyword list. Cool. So I think it can be, I don't think it can be too time consuming to list 1,000 items, even if the pile is getting large. Maybe. I haven't actually pushed S3 in that way. Usually that's why you do a bit of namespacing, so the prefixing becomes more effective. It gets easier. You generally avoid hitting the 1,000 item limit if you try to do it that way. Yeah. So now we have this. I still don't like what it returns. It returns a lot of information. The information is not bad, but I think I just want us to get the contents. So body. This is all very like aggressive. This is kind of aggressive coding, as opposed to defensive coding. This will very much blow up if it's breaking expectations, which is kind of let it crash. Now, let it crash is not everything, so. All right, we can list things, but we don't have anything in the bucket, so we should probably get a put going. So, key, data, that is it. I did this part from some experiments very recently, but almost all of it has fallen out of my head. But we should, if I get stuck, at least on my laptop next to me, I do have some reference I can look up. But where's the fun in that? Let's just put some objects. So, yeah, so by object I mean key, and then they have body for the data, and it's an exe.ws request, and then we get something back. Let's see, I just gotta check what I have in terms of good test files. Might have some decently large files. Well, let's see. I definitely have some files we can use, so it's not a real problem. Well, in this particular case, I guess we don't actually need a file, because we are just writing blah.txt. Hello there. It gives this response, which is kind of dull. I think we can just let it turn OK. Now we should be able to do the list. Then we get this. Don't know that I think this is the perfect representation of a file, but it's all right. It's workable. We could do like a simple version of lists, which just returns the keys, easier to map over, but not right now. Now, if we want the contents, then now this will be a little bit odd, because usually an exclamation point function will like return, like it will blow up if it doesn't find the file. I should probably do not that and just do exe.ws request, which means I will get some kind of result. Case result do. And this response will have something in it. We can return that. And let's see if this is an error. Return the error rewrapped. I'm curious to see what it will actually do, because if I do foo.bar, which shouldn't exist, that gives an error. 404. So an error, which is an HTTP error 404, comma something, lots of stuff. Let's see, yeah, I can just close that. If that's what I'm getting, I just want to return a nil. This is not kind of optimal API design. It will be a little bit flaky, or like you should mix error tuples, nil, and direct return values. This is kind of jank, but it's gonna make experimentation very easy. All right. And this one returns this. Now, I don't really want the status code of this. We can just unpack the body and grab that. So let's see. Compile. Cool. Now, there's a bunch of other niceties to the S3 API. And I guess, well, let's just abuse the fact that we're using an S3. Let's bring up the put again, but instead 20,000. So if we do, actually, we can do let's do 100 directories and 100 files each. So -d/file-f. And we can just put the numbers in here. Should maybe have made it echo something. Could have been good. Let's see, we can do something here meanwhile. Just pull those credentials. Another shell here. We can do Tigris list. So now we have a lot more stuff when we're listing. But if we add a prefix, there one. All right, we can do enum.count to get an idea of what's going on. Okay. So we're not at 100 yet. Let's see. Are we at 50? No. Are we at 20? No. Are we at 10? No. What's going on then? Now I'm curious, very curious if it has failed at like 10 or something. I'd be curious to try that one again, but with a little bit more feedback in it. So let's do iron puts d slash f, and then this. Maybe I will be blocked. Okay, that's the speed. When we're doing it single threaded, so it's kind of expected that it wouldn't be incredibly fast. Yeah, okay. At this speed, I'm not surprised it hadn't gotten that far. Hold on. So of course we could make a variant of this that is multi-threaded. That could be more fun. So let's do def put tons, and that just takes like a key value structure of the things. Task is extreme, key value. This is something I always forget to do with task casing stream. Task casing stream is super fun, but it's no fun at all when you forget to actually execute the stream, because it will do absolutely nothing. So this should run it in a very parallel way. So if we build a KV that is the previous one, so into do, then the key is dir d slash file slash f. Hey, need to sleep. Welcome aboard. txt, and then the value can be Adarsh, you were saying folder. Not following fully, but that's fine. Let's see. That's some file contents right there. Not a parentheses. We want a tuple. So now we have a KV. We can even count it. It is 10,000 items. Tigris, put tons. Put sons. No. Oh, recompile. Recompile. Tigris, put tons. I still didn't add any logging to it. Kind of a bad one. Let's try that again. I don't want to wait and guess how it's doing, so just output the key. Thankfully, it remembers. Whee! Yeah, it's going faster now. It's doing about 32 cores of simultaneous uploads. Considering this is IO bound, I could probably do this with many more processes as well. So task async stream, it defaults to the number of cores on your machine. So this is just writing 10,000 tiny files. If we go with IX mix here, oh, it's done. That's nice of it. But if we do Tigris list now and just count them, it's going to be 1,000 because we're hitting the limit for a single listing. While if we do 100 now, that's 100. So Carl, I don't know what your background is. I know I've seen you around a fair bit, but the beam by default when starting starts one scheduler per core or hyperthread. Yeah, I understand what you mean. And task async stream will start one task that can be run on a scheduler per core available. So in my case, this is a 32 core machine. So it's going to go bonkers, frankly. It's pretty wild. Yeah, so that's just putting a ton of files on there, and I can do that with reasonable confidence. Like, this is what these systems are made for. While NFS and that type of thing, I've stressed NFS and it always makes me nervous. It always does something weird. Yeah. Now, I figured we would cover also some of the kind of cool things that are not as obvious. So we've done kind of obvious stuff now, where we're putting files, we're getting files, we're listing files. We haven't deleted files, which we might as well do, I guess. Actually, something I want with list object. I never recall. So if I want to delete just a bunch of objects, is there a better way than just, yeah, I can do delete objects. Yeah, okay, so you can delete 1,000 keys at a time. Yeah, RMRF. Like I could possibly just drop the bucket and recreate it, but that's, no, I don't want to. That seems annoying. So let's do exterminate list. Now we're gonna be doing some Elixir and oh, this could be a public API. Well, I guess we need to do a function def list to keys. Objects, enum.map. And if I recall correctly, we just want that. That's a lambda expression Elixir style. And then I can pipe it. Objects to keys. So now if I have an empty list, then we are done. And then we can just go exterminated. But if there are items in here, exterminate. No. Then we can do s3 dot delete objects. So it's going to be bucket delete objects, and I'm going to guess that I can just pass that. We can just check ex AWS. So as you can tell, I check documentation a fair bit. That's usually a good idea when programming. So if you're ever uncertain about if it's okay to check the docs all the time, it's actually preferable to just being wrong very often. Oh, delete all objects. Delete all, okay, all listed objects. This is delete objects. Oh, hold on. List objects, bucket, prefix, some prefix. And it can be streamed. This is kind of fun. So now I'm curious about this. I'm not sure if it will if this stream thing prefix, we want to delete everything. So bucket so we changed plans. It wasn't clear. Now I want to try this. So this would be streaming. So as soon as S3 or the object storage sends us information that a file exists, or at least that these 1,000 set of files exist, we will eradicate them. Supposedly. That seems interesting. So let's do that. Don't do this on your production buckets. Don't play with exterminate, my janky function on serious things. But my hope is that after running this, it will mean that the bucket is empty. Actually, I should have added an IO inspect in the stream map or something so we have an idea of what's going on. Nothing. We know nothing about what's going on. But let's see. kind of curious what happens if I go off and do this and then just Are there any of them that are not empty now? Is it just, does the stream not end? Oh, hold on, I can just do this. Okay, there's still 1,000. Can you find out the number of objects? I'm actually curious about that. When I do a big cough, I try not to do it into the microphone. Oh, we can watch it live. They're disappearing. And we're done. Took a while. Single threaded, but streamed. Actually, we should have been able to do that in a different way as well. Oh well. Not so much spent on destroying data. Let's be more constructive. Now, one of the things I think they realized when they were working on S3 as an object storage was that it's a pain in the neck that when you're dealing with large files and file uploads in applications, first the user has to send the file to your application server, which has to process it or even just pass it along to S3. So that's something we stopped doing a long time ago, for those that know. And for those that don't, time to learn. In many cases, not in every case, you can use pre-signed URLs. This works both for sharing a file, giving a file to the user. For example, when they log in, you can give them a pre-signed URL that lets them download an image or a file or something, gives them access. And when it's time to upload something, you can pre-sign an upload URL. And that URL points, in both cases, the URL points directly to the object storage service, which means you have just cryptographically granted them access to post a file or download a file without you needing to hand them the file. This is one of the big upsides of a specialized kind of file service protocol. Yada yada, the bucket name will be used in the host name. I don't think that's the case here. I don't know. Let's see. So let's select a image of some sort. Expand. I think I have pictures / branding is probably a path. Hold on, I'll check. I'll find us my avatar. Simple enough. So read that into this variable. And then we can put that small JPEG. And as I've said, feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to answer when I can. All right, so now we have something that we could sign a fetch for, is my thinking. So this is the thing. Scroll away from me. There we go. Pre-sign. Coming back from a cold. Excuse the pauses when I cough or whatever. Why do I need a config? It's weird. All right, well, I'll try it. See if I get into any trouble. Bucket. Key. Come on, no options. And then we can just do. Where did my mouse go? There. Recompile. Tigris, pre-sign, smile.jpg. Pre-sign get. That's what I named it. So, with that, whoops. Copy link address. Yeah, that allowed me to download it. Accidentally already downloaded once, but let's just confirm. If I open the smile I downloaded, loading smile.jpg failed. Loading meta information. Huh. Did I screw something up with the upload or the download? That's interesting. Oh, it's 36 bytes. 36 bytes. That's not a correct download. I wonder what I did. Actually, yeah, if we list, that's 36 bytes. Image? Hold on. Byte size. Image. Is a little bit bigger than that. Now, I think a put object should be able to handle more than that, but there might be a limit before we need to start doing chunks, which will get us into another sort of advanced topic, but I wasn't planning on getting there quite yet. Curious if object is the limit. 5 gig. Yeah, I don't think I reached a limit like that. And it didn't complain. You know what I just did? I put the string of the file path on the object storage. That's nice, but not what I was going for. Oh, there. That should do it. That might actually work a little bit better. So let's see. Just gonna find that later download. So this is the download. Yes. my old face. Cool. So what you can see here, it's the path to the object on the object storage. It's a public path, just HTTP. But it's like, oh, this signature algorithm, this credential, this date, and yada yada. And there's expiration, and it's all signed. So if anyone tries to manipulate it, it's not going to work. So what you can do with this is you can fetch it for a period of time, and that period of time is configurable and settable. So there's a bunch to what you can do there, but pre-signed URLs is one of these really, really good things. Oh, Punica had the chat off. Let's see. Support life cycles, delete object after XX days. So I know there are limitations to what they support in the in things so far. Bucket lifecycle, no. Object retention, no. And I know they're also curious about what parts of the API surface that people would like to see next, or even if there are things outside of sort of the standard S3 API that you're interested in. So if you let me know or let them know what parts you need, like the big ones I've looked for and would be curious to play with is notifications and versioning. And those are parts of the S3 API. So I would expect that they will build those eventually. I know notifications is certainly on their radar. Makes a lot of sense for the type of workloads people want on the fly. So I think it will arrive soon enough. But yeah, when I spoke to them, they explicitly called out, like, let us know. Like, we can change things, we can make things in different ways than AWS can. And we're happy to listen to customers and find out where they want, where and how they want to use this. So certainly more to come there. Now, so that's a pre-signed download, and you can do a pre-signed upload in a similar way. It's a little bit awkward to demo. I think I could find a curl, like I could generate a URL and do a curl example and stuff. It's kind of easy enough to use, not necessarily. Also, hey, Adolfo, welcome. Yeah, it's easy enough to use pre-signed uploads and downloads. It's just not necessarily worth demoing the upload. There's also the streaming stuff, and there's two typical ways to think of streaming in object storage. So we have the whole multipart upload thing. So that's create multipart upload and its buddy upload part. And then I guess there's complete multipart upload as well. Those all exist. And this way you can stream chunks of a file as you upload it. Hold on, I need to check where I put my copy of. There's a file I've been toying around with, which is an archive of the podcast index. It's a fairly large SQLite file. Just gotta remember where I put it. Yeah, it's a 4 gig file. There it is. So So here's Multipart uploads. I wonder about, so this is also just a better way to upload a file from disk. So if we wanna put a file key from file path. We can do file path s3.upload. Oh, upload.stream file s3 upload bucket key. And this will take care of doing multipart for you. We can test it. Undefined variable file. Oh, wrong file. Something I would like to have in this upload is the opportunity to do some progress notes. It's like I want to know part. So this is max concurrency. Come on. Now I'm curious, how does upload stream file use? This is a little bit of a diversion, but that's part of being a programmer, diverting. Yeah, so this returns a stream, which means I should be able to insert myself here without issue. Stream map chunk and chunk. File stream type. And here it's just tricky part is I would like to know where we are stream-wise. There's some stuff I could do there that's kind of hacky. I would have hoped they would expose some info along the way, but I'm not sure what they do. Oh well. Let's do this. Very classy. With some luck, this should work. So now I should be able to do first this. So that I got that in one. And now we're gonna try something a little bit more challenging. So every uploading there is probably 5 megs. Can actually try. Oh, hold on. I uploaded this as smile.jpg, didn't I? Oh, that's gonna be fun. not sure what this thing thinks it's doing, but it's this blue bar. I think it's a scroll back that's doing something. Not sure. Kind of funny. Yeah. So we're uploading 4 gigs right now. I would have loved to have the numbers as we go. Is there some nice way of summarizing the number as you go through a stream? I don't think there is. Oh, it's supposedly done. So list should give us, yeah, smile.jpg is a bit larger now. Smile.jpg is a podcast database at this point. 4 gigs of podcast database. So that's chunked uploads. 5 meg chunks, but you can stream a file. So for example, if you do need to receive some data from a user, let's say it's audio and you want to do transcripts and then you want to upload the transcripts, or you're receiving video and you want to do a transcode and you want, or just pull some data from it and put that on S3, you could do that process in memory. There are a few different cases where this is useful, or if you're kind of copying from one service to another service, and either end can give you a streaming API, you can essentially only hold on to 5 megs instead of tons, which is nice. So let's see, that's that part. Now, there's also range requests. Has anybody used like chunked up loads on object storage or range requests? Have you done a range request? Let me know in chat. Let's see, I just want to find the docs and see if there's anything clear in the docs about this stuff. Range, binary, cool. Well, we can just look at get object and then search for range. Downloads the specified byte range of an object. So this is just HTTP, but that's what's so good about it. It's just HTTP. Now the way to format these is MDN, range header. I'm sure they have good examples. Unit equal range dot, yeah, bytes there. So we could do this with our get, for example. So we could say there's an optional range. Is there one for I want the entire range? Okay, I want the entire file. No? That's fine. Let me nil this. And for EX AWS, it seemed like I could just shove it in there, probably. So it's a get object opts. Yep. So we can do range, and so then let's do opt if range else end. So then it's range. Or maybe we have range be a tuple, so we pass we'll just do that. Well, let's assume bytes because that seems like the normal thing for us. I don't know what other ranges are super useful or common. I guess you could do bits, megabytes. Yeah. So this would allow us to get the limited range from a thing. So if we try to fetch all of smile.jpg now, it's going to be a lot. It's going to take a while because it's 4 gigs large, but we should be able to do, we just want the first 50 bytes, right? No. Only one that doesn't have a bang. So I can type that into byte size and see. Yeah, 51. So I get bytes 0 to 50. Okay. Inclusive, I think. Or I'm missing something. But what this allows you to do is you can read parts of a file. And people have used and abused this for the best outcomes. Some really fabulous stuff. One good example that I like to bring up and that I think people should look at. Like, have you ever tried to download several files from Google Drive at the same time? It starts spinning, starts spending time, just waiting. Like downloading one file is fine, but downloading multiple, they need to zip them up because you cannot trigger multiple file downloads from a web page. So they zip them up, and only when they're done zipping them up will the download start. Pragmatic for Elixir is an on-the-fly zipping thing. So there's a bit of API to get into. I'm not sure if we're going to feel up for trying it today, but I mean, we could. I think it supports S3 by default. Oh, well, you can use it with uploads as well. No, well, if I give it a bunch of pre-signed URLs, it could fetch those, I believe. Yeah. But what it does is it will do zipping an archive in a streaming way. So it will compress the data as it is pulling it from any number of sources. So you could have some of it in files on disk, some of it on URLs and object storage, some of it in your database. And as they are needed, as files complete compression, it will just fetch the next one. So the moment you hit export and want that zip, it starts downloading. It will download at a kind of variety of speeds, but it will also not stress your server much because you're only serving the data you need to hold in memory. Like you're getting automatic back pressure, and if your client leaves and stops requesting more bytes, that's kind of how file uploads work. They request new parts of the file with range requests. Then
you just stop, and you no longer have to serve the rest of that archive. You don't even have to compress it. So Pacmatic is super cool for that, and it also has a direct integration with Plug, which means it's directly integrated with Phoenix, where if you build up one of these streams, you can essentially just throw it at pacmatic.conf/chunked, and it will do the right thing. I've used that with a client. It was very nice to avoid some really large archives being held on the server. And I've had previous work where I would have definitely benefited from having it. Okay, so that's one cool use for object storage and for range requests specifically. There's also the Explorer Elixir library, which can let you do some interesting things. I don't have a bunch of Parquet files laying around, but if I did, I guess it can do other files as well, but it can do direct connection to file storages such as S3, which means if you have S3 paths and you have data on your S3 buckets, you can just reference those, and it will either, depending on what you're requesting, it will eagerly or lazily pull that information, and it will only pull the information it needs because it can do it in a range request style. This also means there are people who have done this on SQLite 3 VFS HTTP, for example. So this cannot be used for writing to the database in any meaningful way. But if, for example, the large smile.jpg one we just put on this bucket, if we want to query that, the only thing you really need to do to query a database is be able to read bytes where they're stored. And you can do that over HTTP range requests. So you can query a SQLite file that's held in S3 and only pull the data you need at the moment. I'm going to be experimenting more with this. I think we can just plug it into SQLite and get it going in Elixir. And I want to do some more things with this podcast index dump, because 4 gigs of podcast data is interesting, even though it seems like half of it is Bitcoin related, unfortunately. I don't know about that. The tech category in that index is wild. But yeah, so people use S3 style object storage, or the S3 API and object storage, as just a kind of generic data source, and it's really good at being that. So I think this could be a good place to wrap up. I think we've gone over most of this topic, or kind of the starter for this topic, because I want to do a bunch of things with object storage, and I figured it would be good to cover the groundwork. Anyone have questions about object storage, about Tigris, about what we've been doing here, about any of the code? Sound off in the chat, and we can have some more conversation around that. But yeah, otherwise I think we're approaching the end.
I'm just waiting for the chat to catch up. See if you have anything to say. That's the tricky part with questions. Actually, something I'm curious to toy with. I can talk while I wait for questions. Oh, what is the purpose of this module? It will be a light wrap around EXAWS, or do you plan to extend it further? So, because I find EXAWS S3 a little bit clunky, and I think it's that way for good reason. It's a very useful library, so I have no problems with it, but I don't really like the ergonomics of it. While I'm working on projects, I just want slightly simpler functions to deal with that are more suited to my purpose. Carl, you're asking a kind of question you get when someone doesn't have a question but does want to be polite and ask a question, or you really want to know what my toughest. Actually, maybe it's just you want to trigger good story time. Have I had some good stories with like object storage? Not so much. Object storage is pretty straightforward. So I've talked to a client where I was like, how come you don't use a hosted S3? Because they seem like they're very cheap overall, and like they heavily used Seaweed FS actually, and they just paid Hetzner for massive storage boxes and ran Seaweed FS to kind of stitch them together. And Seaweed FS also exposes an S3 compatible object storage. And he was like, it's too expensive. They charge per request. I'm like, really? Does the math check out on that? And yeah. So they did many tens of thousands of puts per day, minute? I don't remember, honestly. They had a lot of requests because they were putting files constantly, like every second or so, from camera systems. And fundamentally, like AWS charges per request, so it was entirely untenable. Their pricing was just high, really high. And this is one of the tricky parts with cloud services, especially like the hyperscalers charge for everything, which is also part of like they kind of have to, or people will abuse the part that they're not charging for that is actually costly in some way. Yeah, so cost is probably one of the tricky parts about object storage typically. So I'm pretty glad to see that Tigris has a pretty straightforward one. It's usage based, which still makes some people nervous, but it has a pretty strong free allowance, and at least they have removed egress to the internet and that type of thing from the equation without needing to go through Cloudflare. Actually planning to experiment with videos and like HTTP live streaming, the way like YouTube does live streaming, for example, over this, because like now we haven't even looked at the geo-replication features, like, because the point wasn't to tell you all about Tigris, the point was to tell you about object storage and kind of what the S3 API has enabled. But it is interesting because they have this very particular approach. Let's see. Object caching. So wherever you upload the file from, it will be stored near there initially, unless you set
some headers for put bucket accelerate configuration. Oh dear. Yeah, I need to look at how to do this from EWS S3. I haven't tried it yet, but by default, it will put your file locally near you in a data center. But if you tell it to actively cache, like eager caching, it will put it in several places so that latencies are low regardless of where you are on the globe. Now, you will get kind of that behavior regardless for files that are used repeatedly, fundamentally like a CDN. Just, oh, I uploaded something here, it probably ends up in a data center in Stockholm. But if it starts getting requested in Japan, there's going to be a copy over there because it was fetched over there, so why not keep it? So it's kind of and that's the CDN idea. But there's no extra work to get that. You just get that out of the box, and I find that interesting. So one of the things I want to do when they have support for custom domains is probably I'll switch my site over. Yeah, Pete, the like SeaweedFS is quite cool. It seems one of the good self-hostable object stores. There is one LeoFS Erlang. Yeah. So I've never heard of anyone who uses this, but oh, I wonder, when was this? 2019. But there is an Erlang thing that is also object storage. Never seen it used or anything, but I was super curious when I saw it. Oh yeah, I haven't looked into auth on SeaweedFS. Maybe that's the drawback. So MinIO is pretty straightforward if you're needing to self-host, or at least like if you're in development, during development. I think most people reach for a MinIO Docker file to have a local S3 compatible. All right, but that sounds like we've pretty much hit any questions, or at least you got your chance. It's been good to be back. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. We can do this. We'll wrap up. And I do plan on streaming next week as well. I will announce the time at the beginning of the week and shout about it. So hopefully you'll catch it. And hope to catch you next time. Stay curious out there. No. Pan the other way. Other way.